Okay, hi everyone. So I'm from the Department of Environment and Science. So the topic we have here, our problem statement, is to do with tagging digital records. It may sound a little boring, but it's fantastic. Parks has a wealth of information, has images, has pictures, has monitoring, has probably the best images sometimes you can see. And one example of that is drones. Some of the backdrop of information we have is absolutely amazing. So what I'm talking about here in summaries, we have lots of data. The data is in varying forms. The data is in different places. It can range from monitoring to actual images to GIS to raw data to actually sound recordings, you name it. Parks has that whole wealth of information. It's in different formats. It's obviously also of differing importance. And what I mean by that is some of that data we need to keep for a long time. Some of that data is just something that's being collected over time. Some of it's relating to how we assess and look at things over a long period of time, monitoring species, for etc. Most of it is actually unstructured. Some of it's in the cloud already. And I suppose in terms of talking about tagging digital records is we do have a classification system already in place within government that we follow. This problem affects the whole of our department, from the staff using the data to our decision makers. It's just looking at parks in particular. We have done some analysis to get a bit of a feel of how much data are we talking about. And this isn't by all means definitive. We know there's lots of different sources and where it's stored, but we're talking terabytes, and we're talking lots and lots of terabytes. 50 plus 80 is a sort of thing people have talked about. Some of that's in the GIS space, some of that's in imagery space, and some of that is our raw data itself. So we reckon within the regions that data storage need and the amount of data we have is starting to grow. So we've already talking about 25 terabytes, for instance, the end of this year, and that's within our regions. And also we have a lot of data here in CBD, which is a lot of the main activity takes place. So to give you an example, we've already taken 20,000 photos, and those photos have been for a roads evaluation project. So that's just giving some of the ideas in terms of amount of data we're talking about. We do have technology constraints out in the regions. The further out you go, the more connectivity becomes an issue. So that's probably something worth being aware about. Our data collection, like I said, is on the rise. It's really exciting times for us within parks. We have drones. We have probably 12 drones, and they're obviously collecting more and more data. We have increase in actually GIS data as well. So what they're hoping to do is they want to take videos of roads, and the roads, 2,000 kilometres. So that's sort of where we're heading to. So this is really starting to grow. We have increased use of body-worn cameras. We're also starting to increase the amount of monitoring data we have. So a little bit like the previous presentation around the signs. We have data, we keep it, and it just keeps growing because we look at it over a number of years. The other data sets, the other sort of data we have is images, pictures, videos. We're into looking at websites now. We have a presence in the social media space. So our images, our photos are of high quality, and that becomes more and more data. So we're struggling to actually keep up with the storage of that data. So what do we need? Our information needs to be classified so we know what's important to us and help us determine what our retention needs to be so we can get rid of it. If we understand what it is, we can determine how long we need to keep it, where we can keep it. We also can then make sure we're not over-classifying some of our data, which can actually be available more openly. Majority of our data hasn't actually been classified to that extent yet, which is what this problem statement talks about. And each data we're having, we need to know the owner, we need to know the classification, we need to know the retention. And the only way we can do this right now is manually. So where do we want to get to? We actually, at the moment, have data. The way we classify our data is an overlay. It's an added piece of work that has to be done. Wouldn't it be great if we could just say, hey, data says, sorry, you can't store this here. Sorry, you can't add this to email. Thank you very much.
Okay, questions. Just a reminder for the folk online, so hashtag #AQTWiG if you want to send some questions through. So, audience first. Don't be shy. Down the front here. Thanks, Shane.
Hello. Would you be willing to, if you could only classify certain types of things, such as photographs, would that be acceptable?
Potentially, I mean, but what we're really, because photos is one part, there's a lot of more data we'd like, yeah.
And what's sort of the minimum accuracy level you'd be looking to achieve?
So we haven't actually established it has to be absolutely this. What we need to do is make sure that that data we have is, if it's classified in terms of confidential, that part of it needs to be correct, so then we would know where we could store it.
So currently you store a lot of data. You mentioned the security requirements, which I'm assuming is the standard 5-level definition,
Yeah.
Queensland government. Yeah. You're already storing data. How are you accessing the data? What's accessing the data now? Surely there's some elements there that you're not.
So generally where we're at is we have an IT department who has obviously servers. We access it mostly internally, mostly stored behind our firewalls. So it's maintained largely internally. There is some data that's stored in systems that we have, but it's a very small proportion. So most of it just resides internally. We have some that's out in the cloud as well, but not a lot.
Down the front.
What's the level between...
Just a moment. No, we need it for the streaming guys.
Sorry, what's the difference between, or what's this kind of split between text, form data and visual data?
I'd say probably visual data is probably the highest, added to that GIS data as well, so, and videos and recordings. So I would say, and this is something we'd have to get back to you on the exact figures, but that's definitely the bigger proportion.
Any questions on stream? No? Any other questions from the audience? Going? Okay, thank you. Thanks, Dale.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
thank you very much.